velkommen, og veldig fint å se dere. Nå er det jo faktisk halvannet år siden vi ble invitert av vår søsterorganisasjon i Danmark til å være med på et samarbeid. Meg bekjent så er det første gang i EWB Norge sin historie at vi har startet på noe sammen med EWB Denmark, så det er jo litt ekstra stas. For oss er det også litt ny måte å jobbe på å ha permanente frivillige fra fagutvalget som er involvert i et prosjekt over tid. Så det er også en veldig, veldig fin litt sånn organisasjonsutviklingsøvelse egentlig også på vår side. Nå har Kristina, Marin og Ginta nylig vært i Zimbabwe, truffet National University of Science and Technology og Lupane State University. Det har vært workshopper og feltbesøk og se på kapasitetsutvikling, muligens være med på å opprette et EWB Zimbabwe, hva er veien videre. Så jeg gleder meg veldig til å høre mer om turen og oppdraget. Okay, I'll swap to English now. I should maybe have done that in the first place. And I'll give the word to Christina first from EWB Denmark to talk a bit about the background for the collaboration.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Marianne. And thank you also for inviting for this presentation and meeting. And as you say, I think also it's the first time that we're doing this kind of collaboration. But it's really nice to have it started. I can tell a bit on myself that I'm a volunteer in Engineers Without Borders Denmark and have been that for about 4 years now. Been involved in different projects and also been coordinator of some thematic groups. I think the construction is a bit different in Denmark, but and then I was asked from Dorte actually almost 2 years ago if I would be interested in a project like this, establishing a partnership in Zimbabwe together with the technical university, maybe even more, 2.5 or something. And then it took, maybe 1 year before we established the contact to the university, and then further 1.5 years together with online meetings for this before we entered actually Zimbabwe. But I will start with just a short presentation of how we entered this process and project. And then I think Ginta and Marin will tell a bit more about the more technical and practical part of our mission. So I've prepared a small slideshow. See if I can figure out how to.
On the top right there's a share button.
Yeah, I just need to make sure that it's the right screen that I'm sharing.
Perfect.
So you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, it's good. So a bit of a background on how we came to this from Engineers Without Borders Denmark, as well as EWB Norway. We're a technical humanitarian NGO. We're working with developing strong and sustainable communities and to support the development process for the world's poorest and most vulnerable countries through technical, sustainable, and local solution. And how we do this is always to work through local partnerships where we are including the local communities and local NGOs in the needs assessment and decision making, and we're always making sure that relevant parties are being heard. So our mantra is to build on self-help by involving capacity building and partnerships. So that is one of the reasons why involving so deeply in these partnerships. So our strategy is to work with program countries, also focusing on achieving these solid and long-term partnership, and at the same time also continuously developing solid local knowledge, which gives the opportunity to ensure synergies and interaction across the partnerships and initiatives. And also our experience is that these partnerships require solid investment in terms of time and training. And that's also why it's always been long-term partnerships as a starting point. So until now, EWB Denmark has mainly been having Sierra Leone as a program country since 2006, where we've been working there. But with the development of the organization, we have wanted to focus on 2 program countries, and this was where Zimbabwe came in, based on our experience with projects in the country and the resources that they have, and also the poverty criteria. So when looking at our projects, we have what we call the program countries, which until now has been Sierra Leone, where a lot of our projects are based. But now we also want to focus on Zimbabwe, where we also have had previous projects. Other than that, we also have what we call project countries. So we still involved in projects around the whole world. But this must also be directly, of course, integrated to the EOG strategy. But has to be also standalone projects. Yeah, so how we came to this process of building up an EWB Zimbabwe and a partnership with NUST. So as I said, EWB Denmark has been involved in Zimbabwe since 2016. Where we've run several projects and partnerships in Zimbabwe. Especially during 19 and 21, we have implemented projects on food security and wash and renovation of school buildings. But one of our experiences from the partnership with the local partners was the need for capacity building in especially technical and management skills. So as we've seen that we had good experience from our work in Sierra Leone with working together with technical universities, we thought this as a good solution, or good way to go in Zimbabwe also. So in 2020, the start of 21, we initiated the contact to the technical university NUST, the National University of Science and Technology in Zimbabwe, who was mutually interested also in the involvement or in this partnership, and also in the involvement in the local communities. And then our Secretary General daughter contacted you, Marianne, because she also saw a big interest in having a shared cooperation in this partnership. And then another university, Lupane State University, was also involved, as they have actually been involved in these renovation of buildings in the Lupane area. So they have also afterwards been involved in the process. So yeah, as you said, 1.5 years ago, we started up communication between all 4 parties. For the first 1 year, it was focusing on how to build up this partnership between the 4 partners, and also how to establish this local NGO that was anchored in Zimbabwe, and also which potential projects could be relevant for us to work together on. So one of also the main focus points of collaborating with the university is also, of course, to involve the local knowledge and to have knowledge sharing with the students. So that was also one of the things I think was interesting for you in EWB Norway, as you're also working together with universities and this knowledge sharing part of it. So both that the students could be joining the practical projects and have this learning by doing knowledge, and that we as volunteers could be joining the projects and sharing knowledge across the partnership. So our work on the more soft side of it the last year has been to build up like a concept for our collaboration. So we're looking into NUST and LSU, the two universities, to be the ones establishing the EWB Zimbabwe, and then we have EWB Denmark and EWB Norway to be the supporters of the capacity building of this new organization. And then we want it both to be an opportunity for EWB Zimbabwe in a matter of time to work, of course, with EWB Norway and Denmark together on projects in Zimbabwe, but also with other NGOs or donors, so they would be a standalone institution. We also still want to involve the existing NGOs in Zimbabwe, so that we are not pushing all projects towards only this new EWB Zimbabwe NGO. So we want to incorporate or integrate the local NGOs that are focused on wash or waste or energy. That's also the reason why we have been focusing on these projects on our mission. So the support will both be in capacity building, as we both our organizations have knowledge on, but also the support in infrastructure projects. So that was also what was the foundation or the baseline for our mission this August, where the target was both to, of course, meet our partners face to face after 1.5 years, and to elaborate on this partnership and cooperation. So both to meet what skills were in the two universities and how we were to build the partnership, but also with the focus on potential projects. So we had days with a lot of roundtable meetings at NUST, the university, and we also had days with field trips where we visited some areas in Lupane to point out potential projects. Yeah, and I guess that will be the one Ginta and Marin will be talking more about. So just shortly to recap what we saw from a visit to the two universities. Like, NUST has several interesting departments for knowledge sharing and collaboration, working within water engineering, fiber and polymer industrial engineering, and actually within their industrial engineering department, they have this entire building filled with workshop material. So there's also a lot of competences in having their own workshop and having their own technical knowledge there. Another important department that we met was the Institute of Development Studies, where they are actually already working with this local community development and are very much integrated in the local communities, which is very important part of a project. So we could really see all the competences that were in this department and in general in NUST, at the laboratories, and all the interest also from both students and from the lecturers. And so NUST is located at Bulawayo, where the main projects that at least we have been working on in EWB Denmark are actually placed further north in Lupane. So that is where, the Lupane State University is also placed. So from here we went out on the different field visits, but also from the Lupane State University, there we saw a lot of competences within. They're focusing a lot on agricultural sciences, but also in general engineering and applied science. The laboratory facilities was actually outstanding, I think, and we actually already had like at one of the schools that we visited, they had some issues with the water quality, and we already made a small task for the universities to do analysis at the schools, at the laboratories. So in general, a very good impression from the visits to the universities. So for now, we've I think this 1.5 years that we have spent on online meetings, it was very fruitful to have this only 1 week meeting in Zimbabwe with all the partners. So much more can happen in 1 week when you're face to face than in 1.5 years online and with jobs on the side also. So now we are actually quite a lot closer to both signing a memorandum of understanding, which will be the agreement between the partners. And when that is done, we are also now working on establishing the EWB Zimbabwe. It's mainly anchored at NUST and LSU to find out how to establish this NGO. And when that is done, we can, from EWB Denmark side, I think it's a bit different from your side, but then we can start on the actual fundraising for bigger projects. We're looking into water supply at a specific school that we visited, where there was no water supply today, and also want to look into other smaller projects at the other schools, so that we're including all schools and not just focusing on one. And in the meantime, we have actually already started up these smaller projects that doesn't demand an organization partnership or anything like that. So so we also from EWB Denmark side, we have done this technical report, as I think will match the one you've done, where there's a lot of description on the projects that we have assessed together, all 4 parties in Zimbabwe. So now it's just a matter of getting ahead with these projects. Yeah, so that was a bit of the background story from our sides, and how it's involved in our strategy in EWB Denmark. And now I think we can hear a lot about the more technical part.
Thank you, Christina. It's very, very good to get the broad background picture as well. I think we'll move to Ginta and Marin, and then we will do questions at the end.
Yeah, I guess I can start with our part, and then Ginta can decide if she wants to reshare the presentation or just let me know. How should I?
Yeah, maybe you can share, and if you start from a first slide, and then I take over when we talk about the universities, and and again back to you when we go back to the schools.
Let me just see how to share that when I also have one screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So part of the things we will say will overlap with what Christina said, because we did not perfectly coordinate before, but there will also be plenty of new material, I think. So as mentioned, this is a summary of a workshop that took place in Zimbabwe in August of this year, which has been a result of a 1.5 year long collaboration and online meetings between Engineers Without Borders Denmark and Norway and 2 universities in Zimbabwe. And the focus of the collaboration has been on wash, recycling and energy projects, but not limited only to those. And yes, so that's for the introduction. And for the content of the presentation, we will give a brief background, some things similar to what Christina said. Then Ginta is going to present the program and several days in that program. I'm going to present the field trips we did to the local school, and then we are going to look at collaboration opportunities and some brief conclusions. So the project background, here I have shared the map of Zimbabwe, not knowing how many people are going to join the meeting, and even if they know where Zimbabwe is, maybe they don't know where Lupane and Bulawayo are. So here are 2 cities we have visited. They're around 200 kilometers away from each other. And as Christina said, this collaboration started in 2021, first between Engineers Without Borders in Denmark and National University of Science and Technology, and then Lupane State University and Engineers Without Borders Norway joined later on. And the focus has been on collaborating together on different projects, with one of the goals being establishing Engineers Without Borders Zimbabwe, where one of the main reasons for that was to make funding of the projects easier, as some of the donors are not able to directly fund universities in Zimbabwe or government institutions as well. And over this 1.5 years, a number of people from EWB Norway changed who were assigned to this project. And then in spring this year, it was me and Ginta who joined as the contact people, and it was then us who traveled to Zimbabwe in August this year. That being said, I can let Ginta take over from here, going to the program. I'm not sure if you want to share your own presentation, or you can just let me know when should I click next.
Yeah, you can be responsible for next. Yeah. So here's the program that we had in Zimbabwe, and so Monday and Tuesday we were at NUST in Bulawayo. Then Wednesday we traveled to Lupane. First we had the morning at university visiting faculties and laboratories, and then in the afternoon we visited first 2 schools, Sishongo and Fatima. Thursday we also used a whole day. That was a long day when we had Kana, St. George and Mutape primary schools. And then on Friday we got back to Bulawayo, where we had a summary meeting to share our observations and what we experienced. And then we also had a short meeting on Saturday where we talked about further steps way forward. So you can go to next slide, Marin, where we talk about in details. So Christina already talked a bit about the university, and so NUST is the 2nd largest university in public research university in Zimbabwe, and it's established in 1991 in Bulawayo. We had a massive big meeting when we arrived the first day. In the picture you see below administration building, that was like real fancy meeting room, and we met a lot of important people from faculties and teaching stuff, and it was very interesting because they are all very motivated and very driven people. Said that they also about the structure of university, of course we have engineering faculties, applied science and also commerce. And I think what was important during the first day that we identified that both NUST and LSU, because LSU traveled to Bulawayo, we saw the opportunities in collaboration between universities, but also within the university. So for example, that in Bulawayo, in NUST University, there would be, we saw there was a need in collaboration, better collaboration between faculties. So it was nice in a way to see that us coming there, we managed to get that effect that probably it was kind of like a meeting point for people who maybe wouldn't like talk otherwise so often because they are like a bit in silos. So that felt very good. Set up that when it comes to research and the community projects, NUST is very much involved in implementation phase. So they kind of identify themselves as an expert. And they also, maybe Lupane University is a bit even closer to communities, but NUST is also, they have a good understanding of cultural context. And in addition to that, another thing that was interesting that, or not interesting, it's a bit like the problem, maybe we could say, or challenge, is that when we do implementation phase, we are not so much involved in maintenance work, or like the scoping of those projects often are not thinking so much how that project will be governed, who's going to be owning the products, the deliveries. And therefore, like there are some cases when we have challenges with sustainability of a project. And I think we see that when we look also at some projects that has been done at the schools. I think Marin will talk about that when it comes to the school. On the same day, we also have presentations both from Engineers Without Borders in Denmark and Norway, and also I think there was another SIAT as well presented. So it was a lot of interesting and driven people at that meetings on the first day. It was very good. Marin, you can go to the next slide. And then Tuesday, that was one of our most interesting meetings, because what happened, we went to different locations to development studies, EDS. It belongs to commerce faculty. And those people, they're kind of closest to the communities. They usually collaborate a lot with NGOs, and they do research, they do sustainability plans, capacity building, community programming. So those people were extremely interesting to talk to. It felt like the meeting was not very short, but it felt very short. I feel I could have talked to them a whole day. It was very, very nice. What we do, we also have several research areas, and we research agriculture, natural resources. In Zimbabwe, it's very important. Big business is mining. So we look at artisanal mining. It means when, for example, you have industrial mining, and those mines maybe are not anymore interested for big corporations. They get a bit kind of like semi-abandoned, when people would go there and try still to find some gold. And so there are like different security issues, different social aspects of that. So we do research about that, and also like how to support miners. Then there's migration. We also look at wash and renewables. So we have some knowledge about that, climate change, and also important part is building resilience. So how to empower the communities and help with that. Next slide. We also used Tuesday afternoon after visit in EDS to visit different departments, laboratories. As Christina mentioned, they had that really nice technology center where we had several machines donated from India. We have a cooperation with India, and it was really good quality and good labs. And also you see those blue tanks. During Corona, one of the department, I think it was chemical department, they established a production line for antibac for sanitizer. And that was, we want now to create different production lines to operationalize production of other things that they could probably like make commercial and sell. And the picture on the top left, that's also another production. We try to create those like small scale production lines, like produce jam and or like something. So it's really about like creating something that is not very like maybe big scale, but like also not very small. So something in between that could empower small producers and yeah. And we also had time in the evening after visits to the university, also to go to the local market and see a bit of Bulawayo. So that was also interesting, interesting experience. Good. Next one. Wednesday, we took a bus and we traveled to Lupane, and we started our day at Lupane State University. So Lupane State University, they are, as I said, even closer to communities. They have that motto that they are building communities through knowledge. So it's empowering communities, helping them, and we have like several like projects that are really, how to say, like very close. We have, for example, like some goat housing, because it started as a faculty of agricultural sciences. So that was the first thing. Now we have 4 faculties. We have also applied science, commerce, and social science. And it's approximately 6,000 students that's were due to start school year in September this year. And the same as Bulawayo, it's also an interesting thing in Zimbabwe. We have a new strategy for educational institutions. We call it Education 5.0 model, where we're actually focusing a lot on entrepreneurship and education to teach students skills necessary to create businesses and jobs. So because unemployment is rather high, so we want to teach also not only like how to become a good worker or like good employee, but also like how they actually can create their own workspace, business when after we graduate. And so, yeah, there's a lot of focus on that. Said that, they see the synergy between engineering and social science. So that one thing that you have engineering solutions, but also like how to commercialize that, and not just to leave engineering alone. And as I said, like they have several interesting projects, so they would be involved as an expert. For example, in Lupane Integrated Water Project, we have several solar and water projects in general, and food production. We do that on campus, and some irrigation scheme studies and biogas. So it's a lot of like different things going on. And as Christina said as well, the university is younger than Bulawayo, so the laboratories are very good. Like they are quite new, and the equipment they have there, it's really good. They have good facilities. So it was like little cute university in the middle of nowhere, but I think it has like a good prospects to become a center. And it kind of drives city of Lupane to grow, because it's maybe big word to say city of Lupane, because it's still quite village, one street, but because of establishment of university, it grows, and so it gets bigger and bigger, and it's very good, I think, for that region to have that university there. Yeah, I think from here, Marin, you take that's where the visits to the school starts.
Yeah, so Wednesday after lunch, we took off to visit first of the 5 schools on our list, called Sichongo Primary School. Before starting with it, the information we get about the schools is relatively brief and simple, but more details can be found in the official report that can be accessed on the website. So Sichongo Primary School consists of 2 parts of interest, for us at least. One was the school property, which consisted of some school facilities, toilets, irrigation garden, and the water tank. And another part of the school that we're interested in was a community borehole, which is some few hundred meters away, and an unused pond roughly 100 meters away from the community borehole. The school itself has 3 teachers, around 150 pupils, and they're teaching up to 7th grade. And the main challenge they are facing is that they do not have enough water for school's needs, because this community borehole seen here supplies water to the school only up to 11 in the morning, after which the water is channeled to the local pond. Not this one, but another one behind this structure, which we are going to see in a picture. The community borehole and the well itself belong to the school, but all the equipment belong to the community. So there is a bit of conflict of interest there, where school would like to get more water, but the community also wants water. And the sketch of that can be roughly seen like this. From this community borehole, there is a pipe going to water tank, which is pumping in that direction only up to 11 in the morning. There is a community tap at the community borehole. There's also a pipe going to this other pond, but that one is broken right now. So that is the main challenge. School does not have enough water. In order to investigate how can that be improved, we have visited school first, and then we went to this community borehole location. Okay, two more pictures about the school, just a larger picture of what we have seen before, the community garden and the water tank. And on the next slide, we can see the community borehole. The pump itself is located in this building. This is the solar panel powering the pump. And behind, we can see the pond where animals are being watered at the moment. It is even better visible in this picture. So this is the same structure where the pump is. Right on the other side, there is a pond where animals are being watered. So there are several challenges here, in addition to water being pumped to school only up to 11 o'clock. So after 11 o'clock in the morning, the water is channeled to this pond. And one of the problems here is that the water level in the pond is not controlled. So you can see that when the pond gets full, the water starts leaking out, as in the lower left corner, which basically leads to water being wasted. It also leads to, since animals are watered here, animals can relieve themselves here, and that can lead to pollution by their excrement going down to the earth, to the water level. Another two issues here is that when clouds cover the sun, the pump performance decreases, which is natural, but the solar panels have also been quite dusty, so they might need to be cleaned more regularly. And another issue is that even when it was sunny all the time, the pump has been stopping and going on and off, which suggests that the pump might be continuously reaching the water table, thus having to stop because there is no water to pump, and so on. And many other small details. So based on this, Bo from EWB Denmark has suggested several steps that can be done as a larger project at Sichongo School. The first one would be to renegotiate the agreement between the school and the community, so that the school can perhaps pump water up to 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. The other task would be to regularly clean the solar panels and to rotate them. Not sure if we have that photo here. Yes, you can see that the solar panels now cannot be rotated to face the sun. If that could be done, they could be used more effectively. The third one is to check the panels and the pump that they are working well, and to actually find their capacity to measure the water flow rate at the known water table and sun intensity. The fourth one would be to fix the pipe going to the second pond, so that the animals are using this pond, not the one close to the borehole. The fifth one would be to install the manual valves. As we can see here, the wooden stick is used as a valve to control where the water is going, either to school or to the pond. And the sixth side project could be separation of urine to be used as a fertilizer. So those are some of the brainstorming ideas that could be implemented, all with the main goal of providing the Zichanga school with more water and then also improving the overall infrastructure there. The second school that we have visited on the very same day is Fatima High School, which is a boarding school with 540 students. And the main topic of interest there has been a biodigester system, which is used for producing biogas from water coming from the toilets with the goal of being used in the kitchen. And the system is working, but there have been some challenges with it, and there have been some ideas how to improve it. One of the challenges has been a recent flood where the whole area has been flooded. Perhaps you can also see it in this picture that it looks very wet. And some other challenges have been that the whole area is not fenced and secured from the kids for the school. And some ideas for improvement, we're finding more about the technical specifications of the system itself. Perhaps how to store the gas, because based on my understanding, if I recall right now, the gas is not really stored. It is either used immediately or it is rented out, and so on. More on this can be found in the report, and particularly this school definitely falls more into the expertise of our colleagues from EWB Denmark, hence their picture here. So that was Wednesday, 2 schools. On Thursday, we went to another school called Kana Primary School, where we use a similar sketch. We have this school property where we can see toilets, hand washing system, newly designed hand washing system, and the borehole. So the school has its own borehole. And there is a community borehole a few hundred meters away, which is solar powered. This one is powered manually. This one on a school's property has been built in 1985. It's 54 meters deep. It is very good. It is basically supplying all the water that school needs. But the challenge with it is that it is powered manually, so it is quite difficult for children to use it. And it is also used for watering the garden, but it is not connected to the garden. The water has to be manually carried to the garden, which is also quite difficult for the kids. The other one, the automatic one, is 35 meters deep. It's solar powered. The challenge there is that it is used by anyone in the community on a first come, first served basis. And it has been estimated that it's used by 500 to 700 heads of cattle and at least 2,000 goats. In addition, when we have been there, as visible here in a picture, there are people coming with trucks and with a lot of water containers on the trucks, and they're basically filling as much water as they want. So it's potentially leading to over exploitation. We can have a look at some of the pictures more closely. Yeah, so just marking the taps here. School has its own water and community has its own water, even though when this one runs dry, the community one, people sometimes use school one as well. So you can see the toilets, and here you can see the hand washing system, which is not the best solution. It is very difficult for small kids to use. It is hand operated, so it is not very hygienic. And since it is a bit difficult for small kids to use, teachers have to escort them every single time they need to go to the toilet, which leads to a lot of interruptions during the lectures. So one of the things they would like is to replace this hand-operated system with foot-operated system. Toilets on the left, there are only 7 of them, which is not enough to cover 340 students. And they are not girl-friendly according to the new standards recommended by the government. The building of the new toilets have already started, but then it has stopped because of lack of funding. This is the new hand washing system, not completed yet, and they're interested in ideas how could this be foot powered and so on. And this is a closer look at the well at the school's property with some of the pipes that have earlier been used to channel water to the garden, while now that is done manually. And we have a few more photos with closer look at the community well bore and the pump. That said, there is also a list of suggestions and improvements for this school as well. Main one is to provide a solar-powered pump here at the school's property to replace the manual one. The second one is to introduce water table monitoring, especially the community well bore, so it does not lead to overexploitation of the water resources. Third one is foot-operated hand washing system as a part of this installation here. Fourth one is girl-friendly toilets, which includes soap, mirrors, sanitizers, and some other standardized things. Fifth one would be, as mentioned before, more toilets, because 7 are not enough for school needs. And the last one, not visible here, is to introduce a drip irrigation system at the garden, because right now the garden is watered manually from the bucket. So that has been the third school. Then we have visited another of the smaller schools, or perhaps I would say a brief visit to St. George Primary School, which has around 200 students, and it has a well similar to the one in the previous school, manually operated, 70 meters deep, a lot of water, enough to satisfy the school's needs, but it has two challenges with it. One is that it is difficult to use for small children. This is 1.5 meters high, for example, so the top of this is almost 2 meters high. And at the time of our visit, and sometimes before, the water coming out from the well has been orange brownish, and there have been reports of teachers getting sick after drinking that water. It is this very water that Ginta and Christina has mentioned was sent to Lupane State University for testing to determine what is the issue with the water. And based on the outcome of that testing, different solutions may be proposed, either trying to fix this well or dig another one in a closer vicinity and so on. But the good thing here is that the well itself is rich in water, is enough for school needs, and we suspect from preliminary observations that the pollution of the water might be due to rusty equipment, not a feature of the well itself. And the last school we have visited, fifth one, called Lupane, has a slightly different issue than the previous ones. So at the school property, we have school buildings, we have toilets, library, and so on, and we have a collapsed well, which is completely out of function for last several months. And that is a huge problem for the school because the closest community well is 900 meters away, which basically means that every time people need water for whatever reason, even just going to toilet, they might need to walk 900 meters to community well and come back. In addition, community well is also used by everyone in the community as much as they want. So they're offered animals there, people are filling their buckets with water, and there might be a long queue to get the water, which is very, very inconvenient. The well itself collapsed in spring 2022, and it's 13 meters deep. Here we can see another photo of the well and the borehole, and Bo from EWB Denmark inspecting the well. Another issue this school is facing is that the orientation of the building, of some buildings, have been a bit unfortunate. So their main entrances are facing the direction from which water is coming when it's flood season. The same happens with the toilets. So in addition to fixing the well, another thing could be tackling the flooding danger. But fixing the well is by far the most urgent thing that needs to be done here. Ideally, the well could also be fixed with a solar-powered pump, so that it's not a manual one. But to start with, even the manual one would be very, very fortunate for the school. So those are some improvements here. Fixing the collapsed well, considering introducing a solar pump to do that. That solar energy could also be stored in the batteries and so on and used for electricity, or perhaps internet or something like that, since this is one of the schools that also does not have access to internet, and I'm not sure about the electricity. So that has been the 5th school, and then passing the ball back
Marin,
to
we're
Ginta.
starting to run a little bit out of time, so I think you have to drop down a bit on the details on your last few slides.
Yeah, we can do that. Ginta, do you want to say something here?
Yeah, so when we came back, one thing we worked on when we are, I think it was Friday. Yeah, on Friday we tried to finalize the memorandum of understanding. We did some changes and decided to continue on that during online meetings. And finally, last week, we finalized it, and now we are in the sign-in period. So that was very good. I think we did a lot of progress and common understanding when we were sitting in the same room about the scope of it. And therefore, I think that was crucial for finally signing now. So I'm very happy about it. So that's like a concrete achievement because of the trip, I believe. Yeah, it accelerated the work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I can then basically close with the almost last slide. This is just a brief list of collaboration opportunities, which are discussed in more details in the report. The last 2 things are not mentioned in this presentation, but these are the 2 independent NGOs that we have been working with and that I have visited, and with which we have initiated some email conversations already. But those interested in that can reach out and we will let them know more. Some of the topics here are plastic recycling, honey processing, dam rehabilitation, water pumps, etc., etc. And with that being said, since we're short with time, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for a fantastic level of details.
I was
Really-
not sure about the timing, so I tried to keep it short, but I guess it ended up being longer than planned.
Yeah, you started saying out like maximum 10 minutes, very short. We actually talked for quite a lot longer than that.
Yeah, but then it was said half an hour, so I was actually following.
Really, really good to get so much into it. And are there questions?
I guess like, yeah, I would probably like, if we have like a few minutes, like to ask Christina about your thoughts about the timeline, because now I understand we work further on establishing EWB Denmark, Zimbabwe, and then in the previous meeting we also talked about that we could do some pre-work, and your thoughts about who could own that process and how would you organize that without having an organization in place?
Yeah, so from our side, as we've discussed before, we will have to have this established NGO to do the funding projects. But we're already now working on the process of which fundings we could we could apply for funds for some of the bigger projects, mainly WASH from our side, and then until we have that finalized, we could still be working up on some of the smaller projects that you also mentioned, like yeah, maybe for some local cooperation between the universities and between the communities. But I think like in a first timeline, we have discussed to apply for another CSER funding before the end of this year to continue some of the WASH projects. I'm not sure that that will be possible now. Mainly Bo is in charge of that WASH part, but we want to establish a project group here in Denmark on the WASH projects. That was also where I thought maybe your colleague Rebecca,
yeah.
Maybe wanted to join some of the project meetings for her to know where she could maybe join with her expertise. But we are still in the process of setting up this timeline for the next part of the project.
Okay, perfect. So you want Rebecca to join that project group, or you want also her to join meetings we have now with NUST and LCU?
I think it's a good idea to start with joining the NUST meetings, because those are joint meetings. And then also, I think we need also to figure out how we can do this joint collaboration between Norway and Denmark on projects. Because when you're going into maybe the waste projects, then we could also supply some knowledge here from our project group. I think it hasn't been totally settled how we will do that, but I hope this this cooperation will manage that.
Okay, perfect.
On an overall level, I think it makes perfect sense that someone has to be responsible, and it's and now on the WASH project, if that sort of lies with you, and we find people who want to contribute, and vice versa, if it's things initiated from our side. That's a very overall level, but that I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think there are like two lines that we have now within this, maybe with the end of this week, we have a signed MOU. So on the partnership line, so a signed MOU, and then working on establishing an NGO in Zimbabwe, which we have found out will take a bit longer maybe. Mainly now NUST and LSU are working on the practicalities of that. And then as they are also busy with exams and ending semesters or this coming month, we have agreed that we'll be discussing that in a month from now. So that's the one line, and then one line is the more implemented part with different projects.
Okay,
but it's
perfect.
I have a question as well. You said marine funding made the major issue quite often. I should think quite often that is the major issue, that you know what you need to fix, but you do not have the money to do it. But like for the report that you wrote, Christina, with the recommendations for each of the schools, what you refer to as the small projects. Would you say that is that also a funding issue? Could the university have done this a long time ago, or do they somehow lack the know-how, or if you get the question?
Yeah, I think that maybe the lack is more on the corporation, as I see it. Like they need to know that the demand is there at the local communities. For instance, helping out on these water analysis. Maybe now this has initiated that this is a possibility for the universities to help in that part. And also, as you mentioned, Ginta, the sanitizer production at NUST. Well, a lot of the schools are also looking into sanitation problems, especially during COVID. So these are smaller projects that maybe we could not support financially because it's not needed, but this cooperation could support these kind of smaller projects also. So funding is more on the big infrastructure things, like establishing a new water pump at Lupane school. And yeah.
Heidi, you're having your hand raised. You are
muted.
And yeah, Christina, for this this bigger infrastructure project like the water pump and stuff, is the plan to have like joint with Scandinavian engineers and students from the universities? Is that part of the idea? I love this learning by doing slides you had.
Yeah, so I think we maybe work a bit differently on the volunteer or in the joining the projects in EWB Denmark and Norway. But because yeah, our engineers will be joining as project managers and also in the knowledge sharing part, but it will be of course local entrepreneurs and also local engineers who will be doing the actual implementation. So, but we also wanted that's also like in one of the main focuses of integrating the universities. That we want the students to maybe take internships involving in these projects, and that could just as well also be across universities. So also across universities and knowledge sharing in Denmark and Norway.
Good.
But I'm right when I say that we maybe work differently on projects as.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you have because you have a permanent group of volunteers sort of engaged for long term, whereas we in the administration we are sort of the focal points for projects, and then we recruit volunteer engineers for assignments sort of into them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a bit different. I think Francisco has been waiting for a very long time to to ask something.
Just one question. How difficult it may be to start working on some of these projects to help these people while the process, the formalities of the process and the establishment of the partnerships and so on consolidates? Is it very difficult? Will it be very difficult to start giving some help and now while these processes for establishing, signing memorandums of understanding, etc., finding funding and so on takes place, or has to be first in place before the people over there actually get some help?
I can try to answer that. So regarding the schools I have shown, the ideas mainly came from EWB Denmark, and they took a lot of initiative there. So the only reason why we might need EWB Zimbabwe there is perhaps to channel funding into Zimbabwe, for example. When it comes to know-how and collaboration itself, EWB Norway already did several successful projects with this organization I mentioned on the last slide, but very briefly, Midland Children Home Project. So we already did several projects with them over the last few years. And I have put people from NUST in touch with people from that orphanage, and they might even meet next week. They have been in touch for several weeks already, how they could fix the local water pump and so on. So that is going forward, not only without EWB Zimbabwe, but without any formal agreement. They are just starting to do something. And I have also put in touch people from NUST, LSU, and an NGO called Pro Africa, and another NGO called Alitab, in touch with people from Green Island Vision and some other things and so on. And hopefully some of these initiatives will roll on. None of them strictly requires EWB Zimbabwe. I think the main reason to have EWB Zimbabwe is if we, or more likely EWB Denmark, wants to provide significant funding financially to the project, they need to have a local entity to do that. Even though in theory, even that could be done through some other NGO, for example. And another reason to have EWB Zimbabwe is as a focal point, go-to place for the student as a brand for people who want to get involved with it in Zimbabwe. But I don't think it is prerequisite, and I think it should not be. I think we should not limit ourselves in doing concrete field work. And also EWB Denmark already did projects in Zimbabwe without EWB Zimbabwe. So that would, I think, just make things a bit easier, but it's not a prerequisite.
We have also been discussing the opportunity of, as you say, we have also been involved in other projects in Zimbabwe, but that in this phase of establishing an EWB Zimbabwe, we could also be looking into implementing some of the projects through the former partners and still having the like the cooperation with NUST and LSU incorporated into these partnerships. So it, as you say, Marin, it should definitely not be the limitation of proceeding with projects.
Thank you.
When I heard you said, Marin, when EWB Denmark applies for a large chunk of money, if that was what you said, we don't have a structure where we have anywhere to apply for funds for projects. So that's also, because I've understood that that's what you normally do. You sort of identify opportunities, and then you have, I suppose, companies, partners, foundations that you, so you know where to apply for funds and who is likely to support what?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we have for this mission, and for this partnership, we had a small grant, or from a civil society foundation, which they're mainly focusing on these capacity building projects and more on the softer sides. So when it comes to that, we're often applying for funding here, and then on the more technical sides, we have private company foundations where we're applying for funding.
Yeah, we are more, we were sort of fundraising for everything we do and not one specifically.
Yeah, okay. So that's,
So that's also, no, not that it's not a possibility to do so, but we don't have lots of connections like that's where we could send an application for this kind of project. And plus it's also a bit of a strategic choice to rather focus on having free funding, and then every year we can evaluate like where will the money be of the most use, so to say.
Yeah, okay.
But that being said, we do apply for project funding as well if we have the capacity to do so and know sort of where is it useful to apply.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and also we know that, sorry Francisco, that in Denmark I think it's a lot more foundation to apply for. In Norway it's much often you get from the state you get money, or you get it from private companies, and we are on the partnership with the private companies mostly. But as Marianne said, there are possibilities here as well, but not as you have it in Denmark. I know from before.
Just a quick question for my own information. This funding that you are applying for in Denmark, will they be earmarked for Danish companies so that should be the ones, or for here in Norway? I do remember it was a huge polemic many years ago when NORAD, the Norwegian aid agency, changed the policy, because all the aid agencies in the world have their fundings earmarked. A given percentage of that money should go back to companies from their own country. And at that time, I don't know, by 2000 and something, 3, 4, 5, NORAD said, that's it, we don't have it earmarked. Anybody can apply for carrying out these projects. Our interest is to help people, not necessarily from companies, Norwegian companies. Is there something, or can anybody apply and they will not be marked, or how is it the process there for you in Denmark?
Now you're challenging my knowledge on on funding. I'm actually not sure. I think
it completely depends on where you apply for funds, because all foundations will have their own guidelines. Danida have their guidelines, NORAD have their guidelines, so it's not like it would be one answer.
Maybe EWB EWB Norway can apply through EWB Denmark and also vice versa.
If you see any possibility, or if it's like a joint application, then obviously we would be very happy to participate.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah,
but I think it's very dependent on, especially the private companies, how they earmark their fundings.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Thank you for taking another 15 minutes as well. I think we could have discussed for a lot longer, but I think it's a very good start. And Ginta and Marin and Christina, I think at some stage in the not too distant future, let's also talk about the setup and collaboration, EWB Denmark, EWB Norway, and sort of going forward, what's the most what makes the most sense and is the most practical.
Yeah, we should align on that.
Yeah, I think that's good to continue talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And looking forward to the continuance.
Likewise.
MOU is almost signed.
Next week, same time, same channel.
Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.
You too.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.